going to be on assessing chick quality, primarily in the hatchery, assessing that quality, you know, what things going on in the incubation that might affect our chick quality. And we have a special guest presenter today, Aline Kuntze, Dr. Aline Kuntze from Aviagen. She's been with Aviagen since 2013, about 7 years, and she's an incubation consultant and specialist, also involved with a lot of incubation trials. She's originally from Brazil and had experience in Brazil in the poultry industry as well before she joined Aviagen, and now she's a global consultant for Aviagen. And we're very pleased to have her here with us today for this webinar. And just as a follow-up for next week's webinar, we will have kind of this is a two-part series, is what to do with these chicks at the farm level. And Scott Gillingham from Aviagen will also be talking about that. So tune in today, come back next week, and you can see the second part of this. And I think the information will be very helpful to a lot of people in our enhancing our performance of our birds. So again, question and answer box at the bottom. Some of the questions we get from people during there is like, can we get a copy of this? Can we get a copy of this? Following this, you will get an email. All those that register will get an email that will have a link to this presentation, the recorded version of it. So you will be able to see it later. You can look at it slower, digest the information a little bit more. So you will get this information afterwards that you can look at later and share with the other colleagues in the hatchery. So with that, we will turn the time over to Dr. Aline and let her go ahead with her presentation on assessing chick quality. And I will be here and I'll pop back in at the very end for our questions. So Aline?
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. So as Kit mentioned, I'm going to be talking today about how to access chick quality in the hatchery after the chicks are hatched. I would like to thank you for Jamesway, for Kit, for the invitation. That's a brilliant tool right now during this hard time. So it's a pleasure for me to be here presenting that to you. When we talk about chick quality, actually this is a really subjective matter to define. Chick quality can be one thing for me, can be another thing for different people. So it can be affected by lots of factors. So what happens to the egg before incubation will affect chick quality. So the hen health, egg size, the nutrition is also going to affect. What happens to the egg during incubation, so how the embryo develops, which temperature we manage, humidity, that also can affect chick quality. What happens to the chick when it hatches, so during the period the chicks in the hatchery, when we are processing, vaccinating, that also can affect chick quality. What happens during brooding? So sometimes we can do everything correct in the hatchery, the chicks are leaving the hatchery in good quality, but we can still ruin that quality in the farm. And that's what's Scott's gonna treat next week. And also genetics, of course, can affect chick quality. So the main challenge for us is assure that this chick's gonna become a broiler with good quality, a broiler that has the potential to express all the genetic selection we gave it. And normally we correlate chick quality and broiler performance. They can't be disattached, they walk together. And right now with all the high yield genetic we've been working with, the high speed growth, we have been reducing the length of the cycle. So a good start is essential. If you think about the chick, all the embryo, and then the broiler is gonna be slaughtered at around 38, 40 days, that's a big piece of his life. So whatever we do in the beginning to assure chick quality is gonna reflect on the broiler later performance. And for sure, chick quality is gonna assure that we are gonna have a high growth potential, better livability of our broilers. They're gonna be more robust, they're gonna be able to adapt themselves to different conditions at the farm, and we're gonna have better uniformity. So chick quality for us in our business is essential. Mainly what we're gonna see today is that, first of all, what we do during embryo development in the hatchery is to build the engine, build the broiler engine. After the chicks hatched, after we assure it's quality, then we are gonna drive the car. Then we are gonna make the broiler grow. But the car is not gonna drive if we don't have a good engine. So making sure chick quality is the best we can is gonna for sure assure a better broiler quality in the end. Right? So during incubation, we have all these steps day by day. The embryo is growing, and everything can happen in any of these stages during incubation that can affect these guys, right? And we are here to make sure that we are going to make it work properly. So we are going to have chicks that will be able to be good broilers in the farm. When we talk about chick quality, I'm going to make a global appointment of what chick quality is. So when we talk about chick quality, we are talking about uniformity. So even body weights of our flocks, of our chicks. Chicks that are disease-free, so we want to make sure that the hen was well protected, that's going to transfer the antibodies for the chicken, for the chicks. Physically perfect, no defects, no abnormalities. Alert and active. So when I go to a hatchery, I like to hit on the border of the box, and I like that all the chicks are going to come to me and be curious about it. That shows that those chicks were conducted properly during incubation. And other small characteristics. So we want a beak that is intact and normal without any defect. The nostrils should be normal also, no blood, no red dots. The eyes should be bright and round. When I say round eyes, it's really important because it's funny. When we have chicks with bad quality or chicks that are still green, when we pull them out, they have small eyes. They are not properly round. So that tells us that these chicks are not ready. I want to look also at the down. So I want a fluffy down. The feathers should be really soft and fluffy. With uniform color, they should be yellowish. How much yellow it's going to be will depend if we are using formaldehyde, if we are using other disinfectant in the hatcher, but they need to be naturally yellow. And then we are also looking at the legs. We want the legs hydrate, we want the legs intact, long tarsus and well colored and bright, right? Also, I want to be look at the hooks, the shanks, the toes, no twisted toes, the toes, no twisted toes, right? In a good color. I don't want it to be too pale. I don't want it to be red. I want it to be orange and without any defect, right? When we look into the navels, a good quality chick's gonna be a well-closed navel. There is no stringe, there is no opening, there is nothing leaking from it, and it's gonna be completely healed. You see, this is a really, really, really good navel. That tells me that incubation was conducted in the proper way, right? And there are two ways to access this chick quality, right? We have the quantitative analysis, where we are gonna give numbers to whatever chick quality we have, and we have the qualitative analysis. Independent of the way you choose to work, normally we work with both of them. The qualitative is most common because it's easier to do, it's faster, but independent of what you choose to work, they need to be sampled properly. We need to sample amount of chicks and choose the chicks from spots that are going to really represent our flock and our hatch. If I'm hatching 4 or 5 different flocks, I want to be sampling those 4 or 5 different flocks from different hatchers, from different setters, because sometimes we have the same flock hatching different hatchers, and chick quality can be different depending on whatever happens. So always make sure you have sample of whatever you are hatching, because then we are not going to have the illusion that our chicks are good, and at the end they are going to die at the farm. So make a good sample, independent of it's a quantitative analysis or a qualitative analysis. So I'm going to start by the quantitative evaluation. The quantitative evaluation is where we gave numbers to the morphological aspects. So we are going to measure whatever we are going to evaluate. If the navel, the legs, the yolk, we are going to give numbers that are going to make it possible for us to compare one flock to the other, one chick to the other, I'll be able to compare the history from last year to this year, because when we only make the visual assessment, depending on whoever is making, depending on the mood of whoever is making, it's really difficult to compare like my last week hatch to this week hatch. But once I have numbers, I make the chick quality comparable. Like, and it's more objective than the qualitative method, because we are measuring, we are giving different numbers. The available measurements we have for quantitative method is body weight, yolk-free body mass, I'm gonna talk about them later, chick yield and moisture loss, chick length, and other scoring systems like TONA, PASGAR, and Cervantes score. When we talk about body weight, it's really tricky, because depending on the flock age, egg size, hatching time, the body weight is gonna vary. So it's really variable according to other characteristics. So if I have a old flock with small eggs, or if I have an old flock with bigger eggs, the body weight's not a good tool to compare chick quality, right? And another point is that it's affected by residual yolk weight. So if I didn't conduct my incubation properly, I will have a heavy chick, but most of it's gonna be yolk. It doesn't mean that the heavy chick has a good quality. So body weight can be a really tricky. But if you decide to do body weight to check your quality, or to at least check how heavy your chicks are leaving the hatchery, you should weigh the chicks at hatch. So we have an idea how they are hatching before processing, before putting them under stress, before holding, we need to weigh those chicks. And ideally, we should make uniformity and CV calculation, and the CV shouldn't be higher than 8%, right? And to assure that this CV is gonna be okay, we need to have uniform eggs, we need to have a good hatch window, so I need to make sure I'm pulling chicks at the proper time from the hatcher. I'm not pulling them to green, I'm not leaving them there to dehydrate. One important point, I know it's difficult, mainly because of egg stock, but our flock size, we shouldn't be mixing chicks from different flocks, because that's gonna give us a huge variability on weight. So we are gonna see that on the farm. And mainly because of all these variables, preferably we don't use chick weight, body weight to predict chick quality. It's really gonna fluctuate. Mainly what we use is what we call yolk-free body mass, which is shown here like YFBM. What is the yolk-free body mass? Yolk-free body mass is the chick without the yolk. So basically, I'm just measuring whatever is the body mass of the chick, the muscle, the bones, whatever from the yolk was converted into body, right? And every time we are gonna do the yolk-free body mass, I need to make sure I keep the same chick to weight the same yolk. So I weigh the chick, then we are gonna euthanize, kill the chick, remove the yolk, and then weigh the yolk, right? So I'll have complete chick body weight, and then I will have just the yolk weight. And the yolk-free body mass is gonna be the total chick weight less the residual yolk weight. That's gonna give me how much body that chick has. And that's really, really correlated to the broiler performance. It's really correlated to post-hatch performance, much more than the total body weight, right? So mainly what is gonna affect yolk-free body weight during incubation, the most important point is eggshell temperature. Is the temperature the embryo is experiencing inside of the egg during incubation. So this is a paper from Molinar from 2010. And here in blue, we can see eggshell temperature around 100 Fahrenheit or 37.8 Celsius, and the yolk-free body weight across incubation. And here in orange, we have high eggshell temperature, 38.9 or 102 Fahrenheit. And we see that the yolk-free body weight is gonna be lower. That happens because when the embryos are exposed to high temperatures, they are not able to use all the nutrients from the yolk to grow their bodies. So we are gonna have smaller chicks and bigger residual yolks. This is a true case. I was visiting a customer, so we see Physically, and looking at the chicks, we see that they are completely different, but the weight was pretty similar. So my chick on the left was 52.8 grams. My chick on the right was 53 grams. When I evaluated the residual yolk sac, this chick on the left had only 5 grams of residual yolk. That meant that he used most of the yolk to build his body. This other chick on the right had 14.7 grams of residual yolk. 27% of his total body weight was only yolk. So this chick was not able to use the whole yolk to build his body. The result of it is this chick, yolk-free body weight is 47.45 grams, and this chick's 38.3. And they have the same body weight, but for sure I may say that this guy on the right won't grow as better as this guy on the left. And that's gonna reflect also in other organs development, such as heart. So the chick on the left had 0.9% relative heart weight, the chick on the right 0.37 relative heart weight. So that makes us think that this broiler is not gonna be a good grower in the farm, right? And that also affects, of course, guts development, high immune system development. So yolk-free body weight is a really interesting tool. The problem is that it's destructive. I don't wanna be killing a lot of chicks from my hatch every day to make this sampling. So this is a sample we're gonna be doing eventually to check how my egg shell temperature is, to check how effective it is my incubation. But it can't be done as a routine because nobody's willing to kill 50 chicks per flock or 100 chicks per flock every day. But just so you know, it's really, really interesting, and there is a high correlation with late broiler performance. Another tool we have to measure chick quality is chick yield. Chick yield is the weight of the chick comparing to the weight of the egg. And normally the ideal chick yield when we take off the chicks is 67 to 68%. So the chick should be 67 to 68% of the egg weight before incubation. We have, if you want to learn a bit more, we have some tools in our website. They are called How To. They teach you how to do it and why to do it, right? And together with the chick yield, we are going to be evaluating moisture loss during incubation. So this is really important to evaluate if my embryos lost enough moisture before transfer. So that's going to assure we are going to have a air cell with a good size, that they are going to be able to fill their lungs when they are peeping. And also it tells us if the chicks were held for too long in the hatch or if I'm pulling them out at the right time. So basically, if I have a chick with a high yield above 68, above 69%, these chicks are going to be lazy, they are going to be tired. When I place them in the farm, they are not willing to eat, they just want to sleep. At the same way, if I'm placing a chick with lower yield, like 67, 66, it's a chick that I left too long in the hatcher, I should have pulled it out before. This chick's gonna be dehydrated, it's gonna be tired, and also won't perform nice in the farm. So chick yield is a tool that I see a lot of hatcheries, they don't use it. So right now I'm really encouraging you to start making. It's really interesting and tell us about a lot of things about our incubation. Here's an example of a green chick that was pulled out too early. So this chick probably has a high yield, around 69, 70%. And it won't eat, it won't drink when get to the farm. All you want to be doing is sleeping. On the other hand, this chick is a chick that stayed too long in the hatcher. Probably chick yield is 65, 67, 66. It's a dehydrated chick and also will perform poor in the farm. So once we look at the chick boxes, we see these chicks. But if I measure chick yield, I will have the numbers to compare how it was last year in the same time. Is it the relative humidity outside that is too low? It's my incubation time that is wrong. Do I need to adjust it? So I know looking by this chick that is bad, but if I have the number, I can have a history to compare different years, different seasons, different machines, different flocks, right? Another interesting tool that really works with the yolk-free body mass is the chick length. So it's measuring the length of the cheek since the beak to the end of the toe. And this tool is really, really correlated to the final body weight of the broiler at the farm. The only problem with this tool is that it's really variable. Like if I am stretching the cheek to measure its length, someone can go there and just stretch a bit more, then I'm gonna have 1 centimeter extra. And 1 centimeter is gonna make a big difference on whatever we are expecting. So we need to be really, really careful when we are doing, because there are some people, they think the cheeks are springs and they just stretch the cheeks too much, then oh, they have 22 centimeters. But when I measure, they only have 19. So it's really variable. If you decide to do it in order to track your cheek quality, you should train one person, and that person should be the one to be doing it across the time, because it can be really variable, but it's a really interesting to be applied also. And last of the quantitative methods, we have, these are really old techniques, but they still work, they still are here to be used. They are Tona, Pasgar, and Cervantes score. So all of them, they are gonna transform the morphological characteristics we discussed until now in numbers. So like Pasgar score, it starts at 100, and the cheek's gonna be losing points with different defects it's gonna present. Tona, we are gonna give points for good qualities, and the highest score is 100, it's 10, sorry. And Cervantes, the highest score is 100. The difference between them, Tona and Pasgar are really similar. The Cervantes method, the only difference that they evaluate also a bacteria contamination in the cheeks and serological information. So we are going to be evaluating the maternal antibodies and if they are positive to mycoplasma or not. All of three are going to basically be evaluating the same stuff. This is an example of the table of the Tona score. So as I said, the good one has the highest score always, and in the end, we are going to be having 10 points if the chicks are really good quality. If they are average, 8, 7 points, and the lowest they score, the worse the chick quality. And the servants are already told, I'm sorry, that mainly the difference is that we have serological information and bacteriological information. But different companies apply different scores to whatever is important to them, but it's a nice way to be tracking chick quality. But for all these three scores, also is important that I have always the same person making the physical evaluation. Because for me, 1 millimeter navel is good. For you, it probably is not good. So we should be having always same people doing the chick quality evaluation to make sure you're going to be comparing beans with beans, right? Not beans with rice. The most common kind of assessment is the qualitative. It's only a visual evaluation. So I'm going to be looking at morphological aspects. And the challenge, as I already mentioned, is that it's really variable between people. So for me, this cheek is yellow enough. For that person, it's not yellow enough. For me, this leg is hydrated. For you, maybe it's not hydrated. So it's really difficult to put that and correlate that with whatever is going to perform in the farm, but it helps us to evaluate our incubation process. So how do we proceed the visual assessment to take the better of it, to generate good information? So ideally, we should look both at takeoff and processing. I know it's difficult when we are like a lot of automation, we have the separator, we are not looking the chicks in the hatcher baskets, but looking at the hatcher baskets is a really important step on chick quality assessment, because sometimes after they are took off from the hatcher baskets, we lose a lot of information. So ideally, look at takeoff and look after processing. The same thing I told before about sampling. Make sure you sample different baskets from different flocks and from different machines. Right, so if one hatcher, I have 3 flocks, sample the 3 flocks in this hatcher. If I have 1 flock and 3 different hatchers, make sure you're sampling baskets from each hatcher. So I'm gonna have a full image of whatever is happening with that flock. And also check chicks before dispatch. So there are some abnormalities, like some lab issues that we don't see while we are taking off or while we are processing the chicks. But once the chicks are ready in the transport boxes, we can see it easily if they have other kind of abnormalities. Check the codes. So every bad chicks that your crew took off from the boxes while they were processing, ask them to keep them for a while so you can go there and check which kind of chicks my team is removing. And then grade these chicks in different categories, like, oh, unhealed navels, it's red hawks, it's big problems, because that's gonna give us a big idea of whatever problem we have during incubation. If I have a lot of bad navels, if I have a lot of leg issues, if I have a lot of big problems, I'm gonna go straight to the point in incubation and fix that. So it's important to look at the codes and grade them into categories. And to make the visual score, it's not only visual, you're gonna see, we're gonna use a lot of important tools that we have. They are not expensive, so smell whatever is happening in your hatchery. That gives us a lot of information. Look, watch the behavior, watch the baskets, watch the machines, the way they work. Listen to the birds. Normally the birds are really noisy when they are under stress. And try to correlate one thing to the other. So all about chick quality is looking at the chicks or looking at the numbers and coming back to your process to find out what is going wrong and fixing what is going wrong, right? So during takeoff, I like to look at if my hatch window is okay, if I have too many chicks that are hatching too early or too late in the same basket. And I like to check if my pulling out timing is correct. So am I leaving the chicks too long in the hatchers? Am I pulling them out too early? So in the same hatcher, look at different baskets. You are gonna see that we have a big problem here of hatch window. We have one basket with almost no chicks hatch. We have a basket with almost everybody hatch. So it's really important to check the hatch baskets before they go to the separator. Check the residue, okay? When we have a correct incubation time, the residue is not gonna be too dirty and it's not gonna be too clean. If it's too clean, that tells me that those chicks need more time to be more mature when I put them out. If it's too dirty, that tells me that they stayed there too long. So we are gonna see now these pictures, the difference. So this is an acceptable residue. You see some meconium, the chicks are there for a while. These start to get dangerous. You see a lot of really dirty eggs. So that means that those chicks stay there for extra time. And this is a courtesy from my friend Good John that I hope he's watching, but probably not. He's sleeping, he's in China. You see, that's unacceptable. That tells me that something went really wrong. Those chicks were supposed to be at the farm by now and not in the hatcher. So you see all the meconium on the eggs. That's really bad. So that's not actually evaluating chick quality, but that will tell us a lot about chick quality. And we have a score. This actually can be considered a quantitative evaluation because I have a score for the Meconium score, we call. So we are going to select the 5 dirtiest eggs from the buggy, and we are going to give the score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 and 5 are terrible. 1 and 2 are what we are looking for. 1 and 2 are acceptable. So this is a nice tool to be doing while you are taking off your chicks. Again, I already showed this picture. When you are taking off, take a look if you find green chicks. You see what I mentioned before, the eyes. When the chicks are green, they don't have round, bright eyes. The eyes are kind of closed. They are kind of sleepy. You can see. Check for different colors. Different colors can mean a lot. So if I have a white chick, that can mean that that chick didn't use the yolk properly during incubation. So it can be a chick that was overheated. That can mean that this chick hatched too late, comparing to the others. That can mean some kind of disease also, like a real virus, astrovirus syndrome. So that can mean a lot. Take a look. And one important thing I forgot to mention in the beginning, when you find abnormalities in your chick, count what's the amount of it you find. So I found one white chick, doesn't mean a lot. But if I found 5, 6 white chicks per box, that's a problem. So any problem we are going to mention now, it becomes a problem when we start to find a big amount of it. If I find one in one day, it's nothing. If I start to find a significant percentage, then we have a problem. Here an example of during takeoff, we see a lot of wet chicks. So we don't want to see these chicks with the neck wet when we are pulling out the chicks. That means we have a lot of green chicks. That means we have chicks with unhealed navels that are not ready to be placed. And that means we are not going to have good performance. Look for dead chicks in the boxes. If we see dead chicks in the hatch baskets, that for sure tells us that there is a problem, mainly in the hatcher. Like sometimes we are working with high CO2 levels or really high temperatures, and we are going to start to find chicks that are dying in the box. If we start to find every basket, we find 1, 2 chicks dead in the boxes, go back to your ventilation, go back to your hatcher, and check what is happening. Check for the legs. Again, so here just to tell you what to look in the legs, we already said we need legs with good hydration, intact, bright, with good color. Here an example of a good leg, good hydration. I don't see the leg vein here. When the bird starts to dehydrate, we start to see, you see the leg vein in the chink. That means that that bird is already dehydrated, that I lost humidity on the bird. Look for red hawks. Normally, red hawks, they can be related to anything that makes the chick struggle to leave the shells. So if it struggles to leave the shells, it's gonna make movements and that's gonna hurt the legs. If I had these combined with, for example, red dots in the beak, probably I have a low moisture loss during incubation, so my moisture loss was not enough. If I have these combined with bad navel, it can be high eggshell temperature. So that's why always we should be checking everything, because we need to correlate the findings and then go back to the machines and have the numbers to make sure what is causing this, right? So here is a really, really bad, it's the worst case I saw of low moisture loss in a single stage hatchery. It was in Brazil. And they were losing, it's a young flock, they were losing kind of 8%, and the damage to the legs were horrible, horrible, horrible. We fixed moisture loss, we took the problem like a magic. So it really tells us a lot about what happens during incubation. And normally when I have low moisture loss, I'm gonna have this kind of lesion in the beak. We're gonna have red dots because of the fart of the chick to be getting out of the shell. But I can also have this kind of lesion in the beak if the chicks are under stress. So if it's too hot, they are gonna have the beak outside the boxes looking for oxygen, looking for fresh air, and they are gonna hurt the beaks. And also if there are too much light in the room, they are gonna be stressed and trying to get out of the box, and we also can see this. So that's why it's important to correlate, think and correlate whatever is happening, right? We're gonna look also to the wings. So what we are looking for when we are pulling out the chicks, it's that the feather blades are closed, right? This tells us that these chicks on the perfect time. If the feather blades are opening like they are a fan, this tells us that this chick is hatched for a while. So this is a chick that is dehydrated. So that also tells us a lot about the chick quality we are placing. Still talking about feathering, this kind of wiring down, you see that it looks like it's burned, it's really short. Look for it also, like sometimes you're gonna find one in a whole hatch or two, but once you start to find a lot, like in this case, You can go back to your machines. You're going to find probably high eggshell temperature that can be causing this. Some nutritional issues also can be causing this. That's why we should have data. If I have my eggshell temperature, correct data, and I know my eggshell temperature is not bad, I'll investigate nutrition. But if my eggshell temperature is high, we should look for that before blaming on the nutritionist, right? Again, the navel, so there are some scores you can do on evaluating navel opening. We don't work with that in Aviagen, we are just the visual evaluation. We have one navel abnormality, which is called leaking navels. It's when you're taking out the cheeks and you see an orangish color around the navel, some liquid orange around the navel. That happens mainly because of lack of synchrony between the embryo physiology and the development of the morphological structures. What means is that sometimes, like when I have high eggshell temperature, I'm speeding up the embryo, the navel closes, but the yolk sac is not completely absorbed, so it starts to leak. Or if I have low moisture loss, so the yolk is too big, the navel is trying to close, but it's still there is remaining outside. Or if it's an old flog, there are lots of factors that can be causing this, so you can take a look and evaluate that. That shows us that something was not right during incubation. Also look for strings, these small strings, like the membranes, they were left behind. The black navels, these are remainings of the yolk sac. You see the navel closed, the yolk sac is outside. This normally happens when we have high eggshell temperature during the end of incubation, the third part, so after 17 days. Sometimes it can be really evident. You see here, big protruding yolk sac. Here it's not that big, but these chicks didn't use their yolk to grow, right? So they are not gonna be good broilers. And the chance that they are gonna die if I don't kill them in the hatchery, if they are gonna die in the farm, is really, really big. Look for behavior also. It's not only physical appearance that tell us about chick quality. The behavior also tells us if the chicks are good or not. So when the chicks are falling on the belts, you're gonna check for the reflex of turning back around. If the chicks fall with the belly up and they remain there, that tells me that we have a problem. Look if there are chicks that are just laid down in the box, in the baskets, you move the box and they are not reacting, something's wrong. Let me see if my video is gonna work. Oops, I'm sorry. My video is not gonna work. Okay, so here is my example where the chicks are running in the belt. I put on slow motion, but you're gonna start to see lots of chicks. The belt is on the end here. You're gonna start to see lots of chicks that they are not turning, they are not reacting. Normally when they fall in the belt, they start to walk from one side to the other. They start to try to go back to wherever they were. In this case, all the chicks were just laying there. These chicks, we had a problem of, you start to see, look, lots of chicks that are not really reacting. So these chicks were not ready to come. They were chicks that were still green, so they were sleepy, even though they were falling in the belt. They were not reacting. They didn't have any reflex. That tells me that something is really wrong. Here an example where I told you, always go to the chick boxes after they are ready, they are great, and move the chicks with your hand. Everybody should stand up and be active. If you see chicks, they are laid in the bottom of the box like this, you're gonna for sure find a bad chick. So these are silly things to be done, but they really help us to check chick quality. Normally when you see chicks that are laid in the bottom of the box, they can be chicks with splattered legs. That can be happening also because they are struggling to leave the shells. That can be happening for low moisture loss, high temperature. And also some nutritional issues can be causing that. But these chicks, if they go to the farm, they are not going to be able to eat or drink, so they are going to probably die. Still talking about behavior, as I said, use your ears, listen to the chicks. The chicks, they tell us a lot about their comfort. If they are too noisy, they are not comfortable, or they are too hot, or they are too cold, or the CO2 levels in chick holding room is too high. So always listen to the chicks. Also, the two we have, I told you, the how-to, we have one just talking about chick comfort. If you're curious, you want to check. Normally, when the chicks are comfortable, they are just like this, spread in the box, quiet. Some will be sleeping, some will be moving, but they are completely spread, and probably their vent temperature is correct. That's another tool you can use. Measure vent temperature to check chick quality. Right? When they are cold, normally they are huddling in the corner of the box, huddling and sleepy, and probably their vent temperature is below 103 Fahrenheit. And when they are hot, they are normally really noisy, they are painting. It's kind of impossible getting into a chick holding room and not being stressed with all the noise and the screaming they are making. So normally these chicks, they are having vent temperature above 105 Fahrenheit. And one behavior we see, as you can see here, you see the beaks all outside the boxes trying to reach for fresh air. So this behavior tells us that we are damaging chick quality in the hatchery. And that can cause also the red dots in the beak I mentioned before. So normally, whoever used the brown knows that the maximum temperature the browns read is 109 Fahrenheit. So if you're able to make it show high, it's because the chicks are really, really, really hot and under stress, and we are losing quality. So make sure you're checking on behavior and vent temperature also. Also check the smell. When we are taking off the chicks, we don't want to smell bad things. Of course, it's not going to smell like rose, but we don't want to be smelling rotting things. We don't want to be smelling an egg that exploded in the hatcher. We don't want to be smelling a chick that was hatched from a contaminated egg. So that reflects a lot about chick quality. When you are pulling out chicks in every box, you feel that smell, you are gonna for sure have a high first week mortality. What happens not only in the machine, but in the hatcher also, if we have this egg exploding, the chicks are gonna hatch in a really contaminated environment. And their navels are still open when they are hatching. So all this bacteria will be able to get into the navel. So we are gonna have a really, really, really bad chick quality. We are gonna start to see signs of omphalites, signs of contamination. And we know now that omphalites is one big cause of bad chick quality, one big cause of first week mortality, and sometimes one rodent egg is enough to contaminate lots of chicks because of the result of this cross-contamination in the hatchery. So using your nose is a big, big tool to determine chick quality also when we have bad quality on our eggs. And here just I put from you a study from the California University. It was in 2005, it's old, but today it's almost the same. So if you see most of the bacteria, they are bacteria that are present in the environment, Escherichia coli, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus. So it's really, really coming with the eggs. So we need to pay attention to that. Other physical abnormalities we can find here. This slide is an example of biotin deficiency. So we are going to have neurological issues. We're going to see the birds with the neck twisted. You're going to see, I think you can see here, the toes, they are twisted to the inside. And we have the parrot beak. If we have, as I said, if I have one or two chicks in this situation, just forget about it, it's not a problem. But in this case where we could really tell that we had a biotin deficiency, we had almost 10, 15 chicks per box showing these abnormalities. This is related to nutrition, right? We can have other leg abnormalities like multiple members. That can happen for example, vibration in the eggs during egg transport, and we didn't give enough rest for the eggs before incubation, so we have a bigger amount of abnormalities. We have multiple members, multiple heads, multiple beaks, so that can be happening here. That can be just genetic mutation, but then you're not going to find a lot of chicks with this problem. If we find a lot, it can be vibration during egg transport. We can have beak abnormality, crossed beak. That can be nutrition, that can be long storage. There are lots of things that can be affecting. We can have eye problems. We can have chicks with 1 eye, 3 eyes, or in this case, that happens in the hatcher. In one customer I visited, they were using a chemical to disinfect the hatcher, and that was affecting the chick's eyes. And we investigated a lot to find out what was going on. Everybody was thinking of a disease or nutrition, and it was just the nozzles spraying the disinfectant into the boxes, and it was affecting the chick eyes. We can have the exposed brain. This normally happens when we have too high or too low eggshell temperature around day 3 or 4 of incubation, when the neural tube is closing. So this is related to early incubation, temperature during early incubation, but that's a thing we should be pointing. If we find a lot of them here, and if we find a lot of them in the breakouts, that tells us that something's not going well during the beginning of incubation. Well, I think I covered most of the things we can be finding, the things we can be looking after. The most important thing is that, yes, there is a high correlation between chick quality and farm performance. So if you really want to predict how well your broilers are going to be in the farm, it's important to make this chick quality assessment every hatch, because every hatch is different from the other. Normally, we recommend that you have dedicated people for that. So the same person is going to be making the quantitative and the qualitative assessment. So we are going to have a constant way of evaluation. We're going to be able to compare different hatches, compare different machines, right? You need to make sure you're producing valuable and trustable information. So anytime when we are measuring chick yield, moisture loss, make sure you have the right sample, make sure you are discounting the trays and the basket weight, make sure you are generating numbers that can help you in the future. Just don't do it only to have it done. You do it to make sure that the data is correct and that you can use it later. And really use it to make decisions. Like, oh, I have a lot of green chicks, I have a lot of high chick yield chicks. Go back to your machines and fix it. Fix moisture loss, fix incubation time. I have a lot of black navels. Check your eggshell temperature. Don't trust things are happening without measuring. What I like to say is that if we are not measuring, it's not fixable. If I'm not measuring, I don't know if it's wrong or not. I can't say it's right if I'm not checking, if I don't have the numbers. So please check. Every time you see your chicks, go back and check your machines to see what is happening. Because normally what we see is low hatchability, high amount of cows, high amount of dead on arrival, high amount of first week mortality. And in the end, what can be happening is contamination, eggshell temperature too high, too low, water loss, chick yield too bad, hatch window is not correct. So we need to investigate. The chicks tell us a lot, but we need to be listening to them and going back and check our part, do our part to fix whatever needs to be fixed, because that's really detrimental for broiler later performance. And that was what I had to share with you today. I hope I could bring some new or old knowledge for you, and thank you, Keith.
Oh, it was great. And I knew it would be. Seen you speak before, so I knew it would be great. Now I hope you're ready for some questions.
Okay.
We've got several questions. No, you did a very good job covering that. A lot of very good information. a lot of interest in this topic beforehand, and you stimulated some more questions, but gave a lot of good information as well. One of the questions that has come on here a couple of different times, I'll kind of summarize it. In one of the pictures you had, you showed the yolks, the residual yolks. Some are more yellow, some are more green. What does that mean? And is there a way to assess chick quality and maybe their performance based upon that?
Oh, no, no. Actually, the greenish one is the reflux, the return of the bile through the duct to the yolk, to whatever is going to be the mecal diverticulus in the field. I should have chosen another picture with different colors, but
yeah. So the question was, is that any assessment at all on the chick quality when you see the difference?
No. And anyways, we can have big residual yolks that are yellow and small that are yellow, or big that are greenish, or small that are greenish.
It's just biology, the variation.
Yeah, just biology.
Okay, perfect.
No.
So another question came on and talked about the different cull chicks. Do you have a range that you shoot for as far as an acceptable level of cull chicks, maybe for young, prime, and old flocks?
We don't have a right number. What we have is that young flocks and old flocks, we accept a higher amount of culls, normally between 1.5, 2% in really young and really old stuff. And in the prime thing, we try to be close to 1%, nothing more than 1%. But not, we don't have a table like of recommendations, but the range I work like acceptable.
1 to 1.5, 2. Because I know some of it's a little bit subjective too, based upon the company that I've seen, and some of them will say, well, we're going to keep these but call them second grade chicks, and so when they talk about culls, it's only the first grade chicks. So
yes, it also depends if you are counting all the reject chicks, or if you are placing some of them in their second class. You're right. Okay.
What, in your perspective, what are the ideal CO2 levels in the hatcher and holding rooms?
Oh my God, we're gonna fight now. Well, for holding rooms, the lowest the better. So we normally try to keep the holding rooms below 1,500 ppm. Yeah. So you can see that everything above 1,500, the chicks are gonna start to be really noisy and stressed. In the hatchers, that's a complicated question, but in the hatchers, I particularly don't like to work with really high CO2 levels. So I'm not a big fan of the idea of running the hatcher CO2, the damper CO2 controlled. I like to run the damper in the hatcher's temperature control to make sure that the machine is not gonna overheat, it's not gonna damage the chicks. So for me, anything between 3,500, 4,500 would be perfect and acceptable all over hatching time. I know that's a really polemic subject, right?
Well, I think it's dependent. I think it's dependent too on equipment, because you've got different types of equipment. You know, of course, we have Jamesway equipment, but then our competitors, and all of them work a little bit differently. So there's a different acceptable ranges. But I think the values you gave are pretty good. I mean, atmosphere.
That's for me as an average. I particularly don't like to see 10,000 ppm CO2 in a hatcher controlling the damper. Like for me, it's scary.
Yeah, that level anytime.
Yes, to think what can go wrong, right? So
yeah, that 10,000 level anytime after 10 days is very detrimental to the chicks. So we definitely want to watch that for sure. In your experience too, and again, we're talking about there's some differences in equipment type. Ideal weight loss during incubation.
We work with a range actually. So we work in a range of 10 to 12.5% for the Ross breeder, right? Of course, single stage machine, you're gonna lose less. You're gonna lose close to 10%. Multi-stage, you're gonna lose more, but the range that is acceptable, trying to keep embryo quality and chick quality from 10 to 12.5%. So anything in between, we accept as a good moisture loss.
And then again, equipment dependent, you might be able to lean a little bit one way or the other, depend on equipment. Okay. Look, is there a way, in your opinion, looking at the inside of the eggshell after the chicks is hatched to assess chick quality or the hatch of that group of eggs? I mean, looking at the inside of the shells.
Normally what I look in the inside of the shells, when you look in the inside of the shells, if the corallantoid membrane, which is the membrane that is surrounding the internal, if it's too bloody, it's too fresh, first of all, that tells me that the chicks are green, because by that time it was supposed to be drier. And another thing you can look is if the membrane is closed in the bottom of the shell. If it's closed, that can tell us that moisture loss was fine. If we can see a part in the bottom where the membrane is not closed, there is a hole where we don't see the blood vessels, that tells us the moisture loss was not enough. So there's this kind of evaluation. You can look inside of the shells when you are taking out the chicks.
Great. So there is a little bit of information we can gather from that.
Yeah.
Great. You mentioned in there dehydration leading to poor feathering. Somebody is asking why dehydration of the chicks might lead to poor feathering.
I don't think I mentioned dehydration. I think I mentioned eggshell temperature too high or nutrition.
The temperature.
Yes, the temperature and nutrition are the main factors that can affect.
Yeah, I don't remember you necessarily saying that, but I wasn't sure. So, what would be the ideal percentage, the target percentage for residual yolk? You kind of gave an example of two different.
Oh yes, it was there, but I didn't mention. We are looking at anything between 9 and 11% average. Of course, there is a variability across the bird. So sometimes to get an average of 9-11%, we are going to have some birds in the sample that are going to have 13, some birds are going to have 8, but anything average between 9 and 11%. Sometimes if we keep the chicks too long in the hatchers, the residual yolk, or too long or too short in the hatcher, the residual yolk number is going to be deceiving, because they are going to lose a bit more moisture and that number is going to change. So that's important to make the residual yolk evaluation at the right pulling time also, but from 9 to 11.
And that's good to know, because some of the old literature indicates a little bit higher yolk percent, but in the modern bird, what you're seeing in the modern bird, 9 to 11 is what's ideal in the modern.
Yes, it's what I run lots of incubation trials, and that's what we normally find when we control eggshell temperature. The range, of course, as I said, there are some individuals, they are going to present 13%, 14%, but the average itself is going to be ranging from 9 to 11.5.
Okay, as far as chick quality, what are the effects of egg storage on chick quality, in your opinion, on chick quality? And can you judge these? I mean, like chicks themselves, can you look at a hatched chick and say, oh, these must have been stored too long? Or
yes, last week I was given a lecture talking about this. Chick quality with long storage eggs, it's really damaged. You're going to see chicks that are hatching too late. They're going to look like chicks with really, really high yield. Chicks that are hatching hours later are going to have a huge hatch window. So normally what happens is that when we store for too long, the viable embryo cells are going to be reducing in numbers. So when we tiger the development, the embryo is going to take longer to start developing. So the whole development is going to be compromised. It's going to develop slower. It's going to hatch later. So we can look at the baskets I showed you. We see difference in chicks that are a lot of white chicks, a lot of wet chicks, and sleep chicks. That's typical from a long storage egg basket.
so how do you think those perform in the farm if you've got long stored? I mean, from what you
probably they are gonna have a poor performance, because they are not since the beginning of development they are weaker embryos. Right. So there are tools today to to avoid that, to reduce that, to recover it. So we have preheating, we have turning, we have the spides technology that reduce the damage. So there are lots of tools to reduce, because there are some working comparing first week mortality related to long storage, and it's higher in eggs with long storage.
And that goes along with some research I had done several years ago, that, you know, anything that's affecting embryo livability will also affect broiler performance and livability, because they're stressed enough to get some to die as embryos, and that carries on for the broiler. So that goes right along with what I've seen as well.
Yes.
A couple of different questions on here relating to this. In your opinion, what is an ideal hatch window, maybe for multi-stage equipment and single stage? Again, you deal with a lot of different incubator types, but what is your ideal range for a hatch window for both multi-stage and single stage?
Well, right now we don't usually work anymore with 36 hours, 32, 24. We work because there are variability according to genetic line. We see the genetic lines behaving differently. So we normally don't see, oh, I need a hatch window of 32 hours, I want 24, I want 12. Normally we look at the number of chicks hatched 24 hours prior to takeoff and 12 hours prior to takeoff. So what we normally see, depending of it can change a bit, the percentage according to the line, but we normally are looking for 25 to 35% hatch at 24 hours before takeoff, and 75 to 85% hatch 12 hours before takeoff. So that's the way we look for it now. That's why we encourage the customers also to take a look once in a while and see the amount of chicks hatched to see how the hatch window is working. So if I check 24 hours and I have 70% of the chicks hatch, that means my hatch window is still open. But we don't work with a number, but normally what I see it's 24 to 26 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody's working with, like in the past, I used to see 36, 38 hours in multi-stage machines. Today, it's not that common anymore.
And it shouldn't be. Yeah. I mean,
yes, but
we follow nature. Yeah, if we follow nature, it's about a 24-hour window is what nature tells us. Do you see an effect for people that may be using formaldehyde in their hatchery and the hatchers on chick quality?
Well, until now, I must say that it's proven that the formaldehyde is known for being the best disinfectant in the hatcher. Of course, I've been seeing good results also with other chemicals like ammonia-based or chlorhexidine or other type of chemicals, but the formaldehyde, it's known to work effectively since we reach the minimal concentration during peeping, right? It's not only formaldehyde, but all the other chemicals. The importance is that we reach a minimal concentration when the birds need it. We don't want it before peeping. We don't want it after everybody's out. We need the correct timing for that. But that for sure affects. If we have egg quality issues, the formaldehyde or the chemicals are going to be really important for that moment, the hatching moment.
Okay. You mentioned light in there, and I remember talking about it. What kind of lighting would you recommend for chick holding area and then also for transportation?
Well, that's another thing. People are trying everything right now, but normally it's known that the blue light, the blue wavelength is the one that calms down the chicks. The green one for transportation and for chick holding is found out to stress them, to reduce body weight. So we normally use the blue one. I never saw using any other color. Like I saw using during incubation, but never other color for holding the chicks. Normally the blue purplish, kind of purple light too.
And a little bit more on the dim side to kind of reduce activity, would you say?
Yes, it's mainly to keep them calm and everything. Unless you have like in the holding room, if you are giving food, if you are giving the pellets, if you are giving, they need some kind of light, but anyways, it's not a lot of light they need to be eating. Some luxes are enough for the chicks to still have the activity to look for food or whatever.
Okay, this question is not necessarily along your presentation lines, but you being a hatchery consultant, and several people have asked this, so we'll get your opinion on it. People are asking a lot of questions about exploders, bangers in the hatchery. What's your opinion? I mean, what can be done about that? But two, how does that affect chick quality out in the field if you get high contamination, essentially, exploders and bangers?
Well, what can be done? Everything starts there in the farm. It's really difficult. It's easy when we have a company where the farm, the hatchery, and the broiler farm, they work together. But like most of the times, the farm is one thing, the hatchery is another. So that always starts there. But for the hatchery to have any kind of action on it, we need to know the numbers. It's always I say, if you don't measure, you can't fix. If I go back to the farm and I tell them, oh, I have a lot of contamination, how much is a lot? So I strongly recommend that at transfer, we point the bangers per flock. Every transfer, oh, I have 4% bangers. This week I have 6. So we can give a feedback to the farm. And we recommend that you candle it also to remove the bangers before they explode in the hatchers, right? But that comes from the farm, like frequency of egg collection, usage of disinfectant at the farm. The eggs need to be disinfected, cleaning of the eggs, not allowing the eggs to get wet, because if we have dirty eggs and they get wet, the situation is even worse. And that's for sure affect chick quality. It's really easy to identify when we have a flock with problems. First of all, during transfer, you are there. You can listen to the eggs exploding. You can smell it. And during hatch, also, you can see those chicks hatching in the middle of that bacterial soup. And for sure, if the chicks are hatching in that contaminated environment, you are going to have higher first week mortality. Contamination it doesn't combine with the hatchery. It shouldn't be there. Of course, it's not a sterile environment, but that kind of contamination with exploder, the hatchery should screen if we see that kind of thing, because that's going to affect strongly chick quality.
Yeah, when you have contamination in there and exploders and it gets on the shell of the eggs, those, particularly the first chicks that are hatching out or any of the chicks, as they're moving around in that basket, if you've got any that their navels aren't completely healed up yet, you just created an avenue, a wick for that bacteria to get inside the chick. And then once they get out in the farm, 24, 48 hours later, we start seeing the results of that.
Yeah, peak normally is 4 days, peak of mortality. So
yep.
It really is.
Okay, I've heard you talk about this before, so I'm going to let you talk about it again.
Oh, God.
The ideal, I guess not necessarily holding time, but what are your opinion on holding time and then transportation time? You know, I've heard in the past people saying, oh, we need to get them to the farm as quick as possible. If it's too long, it's not, but what is your opinion on that as the holding time or transportation time, the effect on chicks?
Well, what we've been learning is that it is possible to keep chick quality even with long journeys, even if I need to hold the chicks for longer. If I keep the right temperature, environment temperature to target vent temperature of 103 to 105, we still can keep chick quality. I know that most of people, the sooner I place them, the better it is, of course. The earliest they have contact with water and food, the better it is. But we've been evaluating, and we can still have good chick quality if I make sure that they are comfortable. Reducing the amount of stress during this period. If I can't place the chicks today, I'm gonna place tomorrow, or they are gonna travel for a long journey. I need to make sure that this time that they are waiting to have access to food and water is the less stressful possible. So good environment temperature, good vent temperature. If I took off the chicks at the right time, the chicks are ready, the yield is fine, they are gonna have the ability to survive. They have the reserve on the yolk to survive. So we now don't work with a number. We know that as soon as possible is better, but we also know that it's possible to keep good chick quality if you keep the chicks comfortable during this period. So
biologically, that's what that yolk is for, is to sustain them like in the nest until the mother hen takes them all out to eat. So it's ability, but so in those times of transportation, what's the ideal temperature you would say if you've got to transport, 12, maybe even 20-hour transportation in a truck? What would be the ideal temperature?
Mainly, we always target vent temperature. So because the outside temperature is going to depend on the humidity. So if we have 30 degrees Celsius, which is 86.8 Fahrenheit, but I have high humidity, the way the chicks are going to feel that temperature is different if I have low humidity. So we need to make sure vent temperature is between the comfort zone, which is 103 to 105. So vent temperature and chick behavior are going to tell everything, but normally it's between 30 degrees to 33 in box temperature, right? Not
Celsius.
In box temperature, 30 to 30 degrees Celsius.
Celsius, yes.
28, yes, or 86 to 90 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
I say both because.
Yeah, we don't want anybody doing 30 degrees Fahrenheit for their chicks.
No, it's 30 to 33 Celsius or 86 to 90 Fahrenheit in box temperature.
Okay. Yep. What is, in your opinion, the ideal hatcher fertile percent? We see hatcher fertile at very peak times. What's ideal, or maybe what's the best that we can really shoot for, in your opinion?
Well, I've seen really, really good results, but let's speak about an average for a hatchery with multiple flock ages. We are chasing around 9.1.5 to 9.3 average if we have a well conducted. I've already seen 9.3, 9.4s, but normally 9.1, 9.1.5 average with flocks, with bad flocks, would be a target for a hatchery that's working properly.
Yeah, and that kind of goes along with the 4 to 5% biological loss during biological development of the embryo. We're going to have some loss in there for sure. What about, you talk about the egg storage, a couple different questions here on egg storage and temperature and things, but this comes up a lot. Moisture or humidity in the egg room, how does that relate? I mean, does that affect your moisture loss, total moisture loss that much?
It depends on how low it is. Normally we add 0.275% of moisture loss for every extra day of storage after 7 days. So if you're really storing the eggs for long time, like it happens sometimes in GP hatcheries, they store eggs for 21, 22, that can increase kind of 1-2% in your moisture loss. So every time you calculate the moisture loss, in this case, you need to add 0.5% for every 2 extra days you held the eggs. But if you're holding the eggs for 7 days and you are reaching 65 at least % of relative humidity, you're good. You don't need to be spraying.
Right. If
your sorry?
No, I was going to say, if your temperature is down like it should be, and you get humidity, you're going to have very little, if any, moisture loss.
Yes, unless I know that winter time, mainly in Canada and some parts of US, people struggle with 20% relative humidity in egg room. In this case, I would think about adding humidity, but really carefully, because we don't want a lot of water in the floor. We don't want the eggs to get wet. So it needs to be thin. to be taught.
Okay. Okay, so this is a question very specific to your company, to Ross Breed.
Oh, no.
What should the ideal temperature in a multi-stage setters be for the Ross bird?
We look for embryo temperature. So for multi-stage, we accept up to the maximum eggshell temperature, embryo temperature, 102 Fahrenheit, knowing that we are going to have losses. So
embryo,
we try to work in a range from 998 to 101.5 Fahrenheit eggshell temperature. So whatever temperature you work, that keeps most of your eggs in that temperature range is fine. And I can tell you it's 99.3, but it's 99.5 because it depends on how old your machine is, how your heaters are working, what's your ventilation system, are the doors sealed, is the machine full, is the machine half. So we always target eggshell temperature. So take your eggshell temperature and start to adjust from that. If you are still finding lots of 102s, you need to work your set point, you need to see the balance, but there is not a fixed number I can give you for
especially because you deal with multiple different equipment types. And I'll just say from a Jamesway perspective, if we have a multi-stage machine set properly, set full, we're looking at 100.3 eggshell temperature. It's what it should be. But again, the variables are exactly what you said.
Depends on lots of, so the best thing is listen to the embryo, check eggshell temperature and adjust it. There's no
right. I had a question here on the little let me find it again, on the little stringy navels you find on some of the chicks, and I've been asked this before and somebody asked again. Should they just leave them if they see them, or can they cut them off, the dried string navel?
This practical of cutting it off, it was really common in Brazil. For me, it was a nightmare. Because first of all, if I need to use those chicks to place because I'll be short, it means that the number is really high. So first thing I would do is go back and try to fix it, right?
Right.
Checking the temperatures, check the humidity in the hatchers. But until I can fix, I must already know that if there is this stringe, it means that the navel is not completely closed, it's not completely healed. So when I place this chick, there is a big chance that it's gonna have a bacterial contamination, that's gonna die or have poor performance in the first week. Cutting it, the only thing is gonna help if you cut, because the navel is already not completely healed, okay? The only thing that's gonna help is that you can see in the hatchery, the other chicks, they are curious. So they're gonna start to pick on that, and then suddenly all the yolk and the guts are gonna come out. So there are people that they like to cut to avoid exactly the other chicks to pick on it and remove it from the body. But we already know, even if you cut, you're not solving the problem. The navel is not completely healed and the performance is gonna be poor.
Right, yeah. What have you seen as far as a correlation between high temperature in the hatchers and the effects on the chicks, and then potential bacterial contamination seen in the farm?
High temperature in the hatcher won't be enough to give the fat on the chicks. Mainly what's gonna happen, it can, if it's in the beginning, of course, before the chicks are hatched, we are gonna have probably are gonna have the same signs we have for high temperature in the setter, in the final incubation. So you're gonna have the black navels, you're gonna have the strings, but we are not gonna have physical effects like legs or brain or feathers. We are mostly what we're gonna lose is chick quality because of the heat stress. So every time the chick's out of the comfort zone, it's gonna be losing quality. They're gonna start to be painting, And through painting, they start to lose water from the residual yolk that they are supposed to use. It's supposed to support them during early development. So if they are painting the hatchery because of high temperature, that's gonna damage some part of the reserve they have the yolk to support during transport or whatever. And regarding contamination, the temperature, even if it's the normal temperature, the lower temperature, it's already really it really helps bacterial contamination. So I'm not sure how higher temperature is gonna help bacterial contamination. Don't know if I understood.
Well, I think they said if you have higher temperature in the hatchers, would you see that affecting the bacterial contamination as noticed in the farm? Because we know too high a temperature can affect chick quality.
Yes.
Would the result of that be some infection we see in the farm? I think that's...
Yes, like if you have high temperature in the hatcher, right after transfer and you don't have the right usage of residual yolk, you're going to have unhealed navels. You're going to have the black navels, the strange that it's an open door for bacterial penetration to the navels. In this case, that would be, but not to the environment of the hatcher. I don't know if you understand, but yes, that can damage the navel healing. So
yep. So then damage the navel healing, and then you get infection, and you see that. Okay, here's an interesting question that we might have a discussion on. Okay, so somebody's asked, they've got some split or splayed leg found, not necessarily in the hatchery, but at the broiler farm. Is this a hatchery issue and hatchery management that's causing that?
It depends. I've been called to a lot of visits regarding this, and that's why we need to evaluate what in the hatchery can be causing it. So we have different factors, like if I have, like I said, really too high moisture loss or too low moisture loss, I will have leg problems. The birds can hatch with legs. If I have too high eggshell temperature, the embryo is stressing, it's gonna have damage to the legs. If I have too low, it's also gonna have, but I really need to check because that can be related to other.
Yeah. Well, so let me narrow this question a little bit. I've had this discussion with some people as well. So if those conditions that you indicated there can obviously, like you said, cause splayed leg in the hatchery, what if we're not seeing that at the hatchery? What if we're not seeing any of those signs in chick evaluation at the hatchery, yet 2 to 3 weeks later it's appearing at the farm? Would that necessarily be a hatchery issue if we're not seeing any signs of high temperature, humidity in the hatch? The hatch quality looks good, yet then all of a sudden it's appearing a couple weeks later at the farm. Is that, you still thinking that might be hatchery related, or?
I would normally not think. I would think about a disease or transport, but there are some studies that also show that eggshell temperature, sometimes high eggshell temperature, you're not gonna see damage to the nails, you're not gonna see damage to the yolk, residual yolk size, but you can affect the plate growth on the tibia. So in this case, but then in this case, the bird is gonna lose the leg. But at the same time, I'm gonna be tracking that in the hatcher.
You would probably see that in the hatcher too.
Yes, you're gonna see the high eggshell temperature. If you are measuring and you have the problem related to the hatchery, you're gonna find it.
Yeah.
I tell you, because of visits I do, that I find when you see this kind of chicks, you measure, you go back to, you take the proper sampling, you find the issue. So it can be hatchery related, but if you are sure everything's correct in the hatchery, I would think about.
And if you're not seeing other hatchery, because there's a lot of issues we see with chick quality, they can say, oh, this is indicative of high temperature or low temperature humidity.
Yes.
But typically, if you have those situations in the incubation or hatching period, we're going to see something as far as chick quality that's going to indicate that as well. Typically.
Yes, you're going to see other, the chicks are going to tell you it's impossible that you don't get it.
Yeah. Like you said, listen to the chicks, right?
Yeah.
Um, okay, there's several here. I'm going through them now because there's a lot of duplicate ones. And just for FYI, for people that are still on here, if we don't get to your question on here, it's something that we can address later in an email. Some of them maybe not directly related to this or have been kind of answered already. Okay, here's another one as far as your transportation. What would be an acceptable weight loss of the chicks for transport? Say there's a 20 to 30 hour transportation time period from the hatchery to the farm. Is there an amount of weight loss that's acceptable?
Normally, that I'm taking from what I've been seeing, where you still have good quality, you lose kind of 9–10%. So if your chicks hatch with 6–7% chick yield, right, when you are gonna measure, when you are placing, it's gonna have 55–57% chick yield. So kind of 10% weight break from hatch to placement.
Yeah, and that again would depend on how long they're actually going.
Yes, it's unavoidable. You can't avoid dehydrating during transport because they are there, they are breathing. Only through breathing they already lose water. If they are panting, you accelerate the loss, but you can accept up to 10%.
Yeah, on a long transport. Anything more than that, we may start having issues, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, here's another question. Again, we deal with different equipment, so it depends. But an ideal range of temperature and humidity in the hatcher. And again, like we said, we're concerned about the embryo, and the environment we create is trying to make the embryo fit a range that we want. But what do you see as far as a range of temperature and humidity that will generally give us that quality?
Actually, right now, the big thing today in the hatcher temperature, we've been working with drop down stage. So you transfer with one temperature, and while the chicks are hatching, we start to drop that temperature. So there is not a fixed temperature. And then it depends on the equipment. Normally people transfer with 98.5, 98. And then as soon as the chicks are hatching and you skip the hatch bubble, once the hatch bubble is starting to drop, you can start dropping. And then it depends on the fertility of the flock. If we have a huge amount of chicks in the hatcher, we can drop up to 95 Fahrenheit in the end. And regarding relative humidity, the humidity is mostly important when after the chicks are hatched. Of course, we need a certain humidity in the hatcher after transfer, but once they start hatching, they're gonna build the humidity themselves. You don't need to put 88, 90%, 9 Fahrenheit wet bulb in the hatcher, because after they hatch, they are gonna start to release that humidity while they are hatching. So after the chicks are hatched, yes, we need to start to be concerned. So we need to have at least 6–65% relative humidity in the hatcher after the chicks are out to keep their body hydration. And then the set point is going to depend on your temperature set point. If you have 98, if you have 97, your wet bulb is going to be different in order to reach the same amount of relative humidity.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, the chicks really, they add to that. I mean, oftentimes we don't even add humidity in the hatchers because
yes,
we've got a big hatch coming off. And there are a lot of chicks hatching. They're just adding humidity constantly.
Yes, nowadays it's really difficult to use spray nozzles or everything in hatchers. But
yeah. Okay, here's a question. Somebody's getting a lot of early hatch. How do they minimize early hatch chicks?
Incubate on the right time.
That's when you set them and you store all that stuff.
Yes, I would first check if it's that, like in a batch of eggs, some are hatching earlier than the others, or if everybody's hatching earlier. So if everybody's hatching earlier, all we need is to adjust incubation time. But if in a batch of eggs, we have some hatching earlier, we are probably gonna look for some hot spots in the machines, in the setters, mainly in the setters, some hot spots. So would be all about incubation time or hatching time. So I would look for that.
So if the whole hatch is hatching really early, then adjust when you're setting them. But
yes, unless it's one hatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's one hatcher comparing to the others, then the problem must be in the machine. But if everybody's hatching earlier, just adjust incubation time.
Or if they're like you said, if there are spots, some chicks are hatching early and some are not. That's where we look at our ventilation and hot spots in the machine.
Yeah.
Okay, here's getting your opinion on something here. The probiotics or feed additives, numerous different types of probiotics, feed additives, whatever, given to chicks during transportation. Somebody wants you to say, should you have a light on it or not a light on it, but what is your opinion? Should it be done or not, adding feed additives?
I've seen people doing it in different ways. I've seen people doing the probiotics, not supplements. I'm talking about strictly probiotics. I've been people doing it in the hatchers, like through spraying. I've been seeing people doing it during vaccination, spray vaccination, during transport. And actually what you are doing, you are allowing the chick to build the intestinal flora earlier. It's not gonna hurt, actually, but then it depends on how much you are willing to spend. I don't have any results on how worth it is, like to do that, if it's gonna affect first week mortality, if it's gonna affect 7 days body weight, but I never saw results with really consistent positive results correlating. Like a probiotic is gonna give 5 grams extra at 7 days body weight, but it's not gonna hurt you. But if it's not really clear if it brings the benefit to be worth to be made.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on a lot of it. Is that there's not, to me, there's not enough information to say absolutely do it, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yep. Where was this one? I had one on here. Okay, moisture loss. And this evidently this person has seen this. Why would moisture loss and leg problems be related? What is the mechanism?
Okay, so the moisture loss, mainly why it is important. First, because the embryo is also producing water as a result of the metabolism. And we need to lose that amount of water from inside the egg to build the air cell, to have a proper size of air cell. So once the egg is losing moisture, the air cell is gonna be growing and having enough space to store oxygen for the embryo when the embryo starts to peep. And around 19 days and a half of incubation, we have the internal peeping. The internal peeping is when the embryo breaks the membrane that is between the shell and the embryo. So the membrane that is surrounding the air cell. When the embryo peeps that membrane, it's a really stressing time because he's migrating from membrane respiration, so it's respirating by the coriolantoid membrane, and it's going to start to breathe through the lungs. So at that moment, it's really critical. So it needs to break the membrane, fill the lungs with oxygen, and then after he remove all the water from the lungs, it's going to be able to finally have strength to do the external peeping and leave the shells. If we have low moisture loss, the size of this air cell is going to be too small. So there won't be enough oxygen for the embryo to fill the lungs with oxygen and to be able to do the movement to leave the shell. So it's going to struggle to do the external peeping. It's going to suffer more than a normal embryo. And the trend is that, like a normal embryo, I'm gonna do the movement, it's gonna use the right wing to leave the shell with the beak. And this embryo that couldn't really fill the lungs with oxygen, is struggling, it's gonna start to use also the legs to make the effort to leave the shells because it's suffocating inside of the egg. So normally that's why we have the hawks and we have the dots in the beak because of the struggling to leave the shell.
Yeah, that's really the bottom line, is that those red hawks and stuff, it indicates they struggle to get out.
Yes.
That the humidity level made these hawks red. It created a condition that they struggled to get out, causing them to have red hawks.
Yes.
And so that's yeah, that's important to understand, that is that's an effect of that, but it's not, they're not red because of the humidity. Okay, so one or two more questions here. The transfer time from the setter to the hatcher, a lot of that for people that use an ovoject is determined on when the ideal time for an ovojection. If you're not using an ovoject, in your opinion, what would be the ideal time to move them from the setter to the hatcher? And I'll add this, in the event that you have the fluctuation of the ability, should I move them earlier than 18 days, or should I leave them in the setter as long as possible? So one, what's your ideal time? Two, where would you lean one direction or another if you could?
Disregarding vaccination, then ideally we would transfer the eggs from around 18 days and 12 hours. Thinking about the embryo is the moment where the embryo is not moving inside of the egg, it's not occupying the whole egg because it still didn't do the internal peeping, so it's the best moment to transfer. When we transfer early, we get the risk that like 17 days and something, the embryo is turning inside of the egg, its position itself, so we can cause lots of malpositioning if we transfer too early. If we transfer too late, after the internal peeping, the embryo is occupying too much space, we can have more damage because of transfer movement, so normally 18 and 12. If I need to decide going, keeping them, transferring them earlier or keeping them more in the setter, it would depend first of how long more I would keep, of course. And second, if my machine is capable of keep the heat production of those embryos inside of the setter. Because if I keep the eggs too long, like I normally transfer 18 and a half, and I'm gonna transfer tomorrow 19 and a half, but I can control my eggshell temperature in the machine, it's much worse than if I transfer them with 17 days. So I wouldn't hold the chicks much longer than 19 days and 2 hours in the setter. If I need to anticipate, it's not the ideal, of course, but I would anticipate instead of keeping them longer in the setter, because there is a limit where we can remove metabolic heat. Yeah. And when we start internal peeping, the temperature tends to increase. So
yep. The hatcher's designed to remove metabolic heat from chicks at that stage. The incubator is not necessarily as they get older, so they may struggle depending on the incubator itself. Okay, one more question you can answer a couple different ways. Talked about the temperature of transferring chicks and all that. So what about in your transfer room, chick holding room? What are ideal temperatures there? Considering the fact that our chicks are producing heat at this point. So what would be an ideal temperature in your transfer room and holding room?
Transfer room, we want to make sure that those embryos are not losing a lot of temperature. So we try to keep eggshell temperature at least around 9.7 Fahrenheit, not lower than that. So we normally work the room, let me think in Fahrenheit. We normally work the room around 70, 80, 82.
You say what it is in Celsius.
I'm gonna use my phone. It's not the best.
Well, I've got a chart here. You say what you want in Celsius.
28 to 30, the transfer room.
So it's about 82 to 84 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, 82. And then chick holding room. We normally operate chick holding room between 72 and 75 Fahrenheit. But what's gonna tell chick holding room the best temperature, again, is gonna be vent temperature and chick behavior.
Chick behavior, yeah.
Yes, mainly because the chick holding room is not only about temperature, it's also about the amount of fresh air renewal. So sometimes I have the right temperature, but I don't have a lot of air renewal, mainly during winter time. and the CO2 levels go really high, and then the chicks are not comfortable anymore. But the range would be 72 to 75 Fahrenheit.
And I
On the CO2 levels.
yeah, and I think you mentioned that like fresh air, and part of it is that ventilation, because I've seen rooms that maintained a good temperature until it was full of chicks, and then your air movement was disrupted, and you had parts of it, and you could see the chicks panting. So
Yeah.
temperature was fine until it was full of chicks, and it was no longer fine. So you need to do that evaluation, and like I said, look at chick behavior, because they're going to tell you if they're hot. They're going to
So
either their actions, screaming, or whatever.
Yes, panting, screaming. So we need to make sure we have the proper. We recommend 85 cubic meters per 1,000 chicks per hour air renewal. So we never stop injecting fresh air in the room to really avoid the lack of comfort.
Yep. Okay, one more. Somebody pulls chicks early. They've got to get them. They're not quite ready, but they're done for the day. They pull their chicks early. What is that going to do to final broiler performance if they're pulling them? They're green, but they just say, "Hey, we just got to get them out of here."
But they are pulling early and placing them early?
Yeah, they're like the end of the day, and it's like, well, these chicks, we know they're not really ready, but we're going to pull them anyway because we need to process them and get them to the farm. What would be the effects on broiler performance?
Well, we have a study showing a high correlation between high chick yield and first week mortality. First of all, because the navels are not completely healed. And second, the chicks are not mature enough to be placed in a farm. They are like babies. They just hatch. They need a resting time.
Right.
So it will be your first week mortality. It's a bit higher because of this. You should rethink and again adjust incubation time so the chicks are going to be fresh and ready at the time you need them to be.
So yeah, they're definitely going to be a negative effect on the broiler performance.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got more questions here, and we'll get those answered to you by directly by email. A lot of them are kind of related to what we've been doing or been talking about, or not related, but we'll definitely get all those answered. And I just want to thank Aline for great presentation and discussion and question and answer session. A lot of great information you shared with us. And so thank you very much for your time. And